kind of best practices, and I massage it and change it a little bit every once in a while, but they certainly bear repeating. So I just kind of wanted to go over kind of my list of things you always need to do and things you never want to do. But I appreciate you joining me today.
I always learn something.
Okay. Oh, you're so sweet. So right out of the gate, this is what I call my always list. And again, it's subject to change at any given time and or expand. Obviously present all offers. There's a lot of agents out there that these days think that based on the terms of the offer and new language in our listing agreements and things like that, that offers can somehow be filtered, or you can tell an agent, my seller is not agreeing to pay compensation and you've included your compensation and, whatever. You can't do that. You can't be a filter. You're always a funnel, not a filter. And all offers, even verbal, have to be presented all the time, even if it's under contract and even if the seller is sitting at the closing table getting ready to sign the deed over to somebody else. There's just really no exception on that. Always include the name of the licensed brokerage firm that holds your license in all forms of advertising. This is a big problem out there. And I'm going to be teaching a class next month. I think it's on March 20th. I'm going to be teaching a class about advertising and Georgia Real Estate Commission rules. And I'm going to show a lot of examples of bad advertising that's widespread out there. And we're going to go over the rules of what is included in the law and the rules for Georgia Real Estate Commission. But one of the biggest things we see is agents creating logos with either their name or their team name, but absent the name of the firm that holds their license. And that's a big no-no. And if you have a team name and that team name also happens to be a corporation, and you do that, they can stack an additional charge on you of operating as an unlicensed firm. And that's a big, big no-no. And, we have to remember that even if we do incorporate and because license law allows licensees to be paid to a corporation that they have 20% or more ownership in, it doesn't mean that that corporation is practicing real estate. You, the licensee, is the one practicing real estate, and the broker who hangs your license is the one practicing real estate. So that's a big problem. And as a matter of fact, a lot of agents don't even know that the permission to use a team name is nowhere in our license law. And the only permission that a licensee actually has is permission to use their own name and the name of their brokerage, which always must go together. And so the Real Estate Commission lets it slide when people put team names and they don't really make a big fuss out of it. But if you're not mentioning the name of the brokerage you're licensed with and you're not mentioning your name, that can become a huge issue. So that's
if you have those things, the brokerage name and your name, of course, can you have the logo? Like I think we've talked about, I'm incorporated. Can I have my logo on I haven't done it yet because I only made one sign. It was before I had my logo, but can that also be on? It can.
Yes, but you need to just verify it with us, the broker team, because all advertising has to be approved by us. So before you go getting signs made, you're supposed to send it to us, the broker team, and we need to approve to make sure it's compliant with GRAC. So yes, the short answer is yes, with approval.
With approval, yeah.
Disclose your status as an owner agent of a property. And that means even if you're a managing member of the LLC or a beneficiary of a trust and it's a trust-owned property. And it can't be a vague disclosure. What I see agents trying to say, oh, I'm compliant, I disclosed. No, you didn't. You said that in the contract that one of the managing members of the LLC is a licensed agent in Georgia. You didn't say it was you. And so that's a way of disguising yourself as a principal. And you have to be very, very, very transparent that listing agent is managing member of LLC, owner of the property, acting as a principal in this transaction, license, Georgia license number, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it has to be in your face, super duper duper clear. And that's another thing that we see a lot of people trying to skirt around. And again, it's only a matter of time before, if something gets reported, then that becomes a huge issue, and it can really derail people's dealings and business. In cases of advertising complaints, which are usually filed by competitors, actually, they can actually cause you to shut down your website, unpublish it, take down all your social media, redo all your signs. It's an ordeal. It's an expensive and it's a real hassle, to say the least. You have to stay in your real estate salesperson lane. You have to disclose any additional relationship or role you have in the transaction other than that of a real estate agent. And do not add on non-real estate duties to your brokerage agreement or seek to earn additional money from those services through your commission. So stay in your lane. We're not home inspectors. We're not property renovators. If you yourself have a property renovation business and you're wearing both of those hats, then you need to have a separate contract, separate from your listing agreement, which is for brokerage activity, that is disclosing that you're wearing both of those hats, that I am also doing this role over here and I'm doing this role. But you need to have a separate contract with that person for doing that separate work. That does not get lumped in to your listing agreement and paid back in the form of commission, because real estate commission is for real estate sales, not for you to do rehab on the property or be some sort of undisclosed principal where you have a vested interest of making a profit along with the seller. All of that kind of stuff, we see things like that. Other agents do stuff like that. Agents hear about it. They think it's great. They may even take a class where somebody is teaching a class on how to do it. Just because someone's teaching a class doesn't mean it's correct. So you've just got to be very mindful of that. And when in doubt, ask, and we will be happy to help guide you on the correct way to do something and whether you can do it or not. So the never list, don't take advice from other agents. And I know, Carlin, you've been in enough of my classes that rule number one is don't take advice from other agents, customers, clients, or loan officers. Rule number two is don't take advice from customers and clients. And rule number three, don't take advice from loan officers about how to do your job. Seek your own advice from your broker before proceeding. There are some really talented and smart trainers and attorneys in this state. So there's resources available to get accurate information. But when you just take advice from other agents, in other words, let even mimicking their behavior, looking at their practices and thinking that because that practice is being done by them or being done on a large scale, you see it all over social media, you see it in the MLS, that must be okay, it must be correct. That is really a huge mistake. It's also things like when an agent includes a very poorly written special stip in an offer or counteroffer. It's your job to protect and promote the interest of your client. And it may be that special stip needs to be completely redacted and removed and replaced with an appropriate special stip or an appropriate exhibit. But, we have to remember that that's kind of it really is a form of breaking rule number one, is if people dish out stuff to us that's not good and not adequate, and yet we let it stand. So that's definitely a problem. We don't advertise a property use that's not accurate per zoning or other restrictions or exaggerate a feature in a property. Exaggeration is definitely an ethics violation, but advertising a property that is not accurate is not only an ethics violation, it's a license law violation, it's false advertising, and it can also get you sued. So, for example, a good analogy of that is you have somebody that wants you to list their property. They have a full finished basement, and they have a kitchen down there, and they have a bedroom and a bathroom, etc. And they say, hey, Carlin, I want you to advertise this as an income producing property, as an apartment. And meanwhile, you know that this is in your standard suburban cookie cutter neighborhood, and that it is zoned single family residential, not multifamily. So you would be breaking rule number two to take that client's advice and advertise this as an apartment when it's not multifamily. And for that matter, if you found out that those improvements that were made in the basement weren't known by the county, in other words, they didn't pull permits and they've made all those improvements, however good they may be, are not actually permitted, that is a defect that you have to disclose, because the buyer buying that property with unpermitted improvements in it is running a risk that when and if the county ever finds out about those unpermitted permits, they could force them to rip them all out and restore it to its previous condition. So that's very important. Even if you have a client that won't disclose that they've done that, if the red flags are flying and you're like, I'm looking at the tax record and this is describing the basement as unfinished. This is describing the finished square foot as blah. Things like that, where you're looking at it and you're like, the county sees it this way, but yet I'm eyeballing it and I'm looking at it in another way. And when you ask that question, you've been given enough of a clue that you can't just turn a blind eye to it. The other thing is, just the advertising. If somebody were to buy something thinking that they could use it, such as an O&I property, office and industrial, and that they could use it as commercial, or a single family that they could use as a multifamily, and it wasn't zoned that way, and they buy it thinking that that is what they're paying for and that they can make income off of that property or use it a certain way, and they relied on your advertising, that is a lawsuit that is going to get you and your broker sued for false advertising and telling them they could use a property in a way that they can't use legally without massive consequence. So again, very important. Don't mention people or groups of people, categories of people in your advertising, and don't use the word family in your advertising. I know there are a lot of people that say, oh, I've heard attorneys say you can use family, blah, blah, blah. Well, familial status is a protected category, and I just think it's a slippery slope to go down. You sell real estate. You sell dirt and air lots called condos, and you sell houses and foundations and walls and roofs and flooring and things like that. You don't sell people. And when people ask you about people in the neighborhood, it's okay to keep your lips pressed together. Think about what they just asked you. Ask yourself if this person is a HUD shopper, because they might be. But regardless, it's okay to say, I don't know, or I have no idea, or I can't comment on that, even if I did know, because that's a fair housing. That would be a fair housing violation. So again, we always want to explain to the buyer, and we have it in our GAR contract, that they have a duty to inspect the property, but they also have a duty to inspect the neighborhood. So they need to visit the neighborhood at various times and check it out, and visit and look around at the shopping and different community facilities available in the area. And if they want to try to meet some of the neighbors, if they're out and they see people out in their yard and they want to go shake their hand and say hi, that's on them, but that's for them to do. And it's not for us to make a comment about who lives in those houses, even if we know. Even if it's an innocent comment like, are there other kids in the neighborhood the same age as our child and what have you? It's okay to say, I don't know. And it's okay to say, we can't discuss, even if I did know, we can't discuss things like that, blah, blah, blah. It's okay, because that's your job. Don't advise any buyer or seller as to how to terminate a brokerage agreement with another broker. Even if they ask you, contact you first and ask you how to do that. They've accidentally hired the most incompetent agent in the world, and they should have hired you, but they didn't, had lost touch with you. Maybe they knew you years ago. Maybe they're a former client. They called you out of the blue. Please help us. Please come rescue us. Please save us. And while I do know that there are withdrawal forms, and I do know that there's mutual termination docs and unilateral termination docs of brokerage agreements, those are for the brokers and the clients that are in those agreements. Those are not for us to tell someone, these are the docs you need to insist upon or ask for, or advise that they use to sever that agreement, even if that's what they're asking to do. When someone calls you up like that and they're unhappy, you need to remind them that you're not legally under license law or ethically allowed to interfere with any broker's exclusive brokerage agreement. And as much as you would like to help, unfortunately, you can't interfere with that. It would be a license law and an ethics violation. However, you can tell them that their agreement is not with the agent that they're unhappy with, it's with that agent's broker. And that what you can do, and you can even look it up for them as a courtesy, you can look up the main broker contact information. You can find that easiest and most accurately on FMLS Matrix by just looking up the agent, seeing what broker code they're with. Click on the broker code; it'll tell you, Susie Smith is the broker, and then you can look in Matrix and do a search for an agent name and look up Susie Smith's direct cell phone number and Susie Smith's direct email and give it to them and say, "This is the boss. This is who you're ultimately under contract with. This is who you need to talk to, and tell them what's going on and what you're thinking and feeling, and ask them what your options are." We're not going to give them the leading language of this is what your options are, and you can tell them that you're wanting to terminate and this and that. Instead, you're going to simply say, this is, the boss, the one that you're really ultimately in contract with, and you need to give this feedback to them and ask what your options are. And then let them know that you're here, you're available, you're not going anywhere, and that once this relationship has expired or otherwise been resolved, that you would love to speak to them again, but you have to, respect that exclusive relationship and advise that they talk to the boss in charge. So that's my best advice on how to handle those calls, because we all get them. We all get those calls. Please help me. Please help me. I'm in a terrible situation and I made a huge mistake, and I can't stand this agent and I want to get out of it. Don't tell anyone. I added this one because we have this happen, and we have it happen a few times a year. It was really bad during the recession years of 2008, 2009, 2010. All of those years where we had so many foreclosures because the agents that were representing the asset managers and the asset managers that were representing the entities or the banks or the FDIC or the Fannie Mae and the Freddie Mac or whoever it was that actually owned the property, they used to love to tell you that the entity had accepted your offer. Well, that wasn't true at all, because if it ain't in writing, it never happened. And so while they're saying that to you in an email, you can't take that to the bank. Because they're sending you a 16-page addendum package that has to be signed and agreed to by your client, and that is a counteroffer all day long, okay? So you're not under contract, and it's truly not accepted, and we don't want to tell people, use that word accepted, or even say my seller's going to accept. Words, emails, text messages between agents have no authority to bind the parties to anything. However, when you say something like that, even if the client has indicated to you that they're planning to sign it, anything could happen. Another offer could come in right before the client signs the one that they've been negotiating, and you are legally obligated to present it immediately. And if they decide, wait a minute, I don't want to lock down this other one because this is a better offer, it'll close quicker, it's got better terms, and that's our job. That's what we have to do. So just don't use phrases like the client has accepted or is going to accept. Say, I'm presenting it to them for their signature, and I'll let you know as soon as we get it back. And then if you get another offer, just be courteous to the other people and let them know, we just got another offer in. I'm presenting it to the seller as I'm obligated to do. I'll keep you updated, blah, blah, blah. And if they want to resubmit a revised version of their offer, that's on them. You don't have to ask them to do that or say, we're calling for highest and best. I'm really not a big fan of that at all. But communicate honestly and be very transparent, and just don't ever, imply that something's accepted when it's not. And remember, notice means in writing signed by the parties, and the parties are the buyers and the sellers. So when we deliver an accepted contract, that's us delivering notice of acceptance, and that has to happen before the time limit of the offer counteroffer expires. If somebody delivers signed acceptance of an agreement without change, but the delivery, because delivery is everything in contract world, but the delivery actually occurs after the time limit has expired, then it's actually legally considered a counteroffer, not an accepted contract. So what has to happen to fix that is that you have to go back and take that time limit that's expired. Let's say it was February 24th, and let's make it a day in the future, change it to February 25th or 26th, and have all parties initial, and have them fix the time limit to make it alive, and then have them initial the new time limit and then the binding agreement date. And that way they're affirming that we're agreeing that we brought it back to life, and at the time this accepted was delivered, it was alive because we changed it. And we're, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, we're also going to initial next to the binding agreement date to reaffirm the fact that we all believe it's binding on that date. And so those are the types of things you got to do to lock it down. And frankly, it's much better to do that on the actual original offer or counteroffer than it is to try to use another counteroffer form, because it can get confusing. And you certainly don't want to use an amendment to do that if you can help it, because arguably you don't have a binding contract, and only binding contracts can be amended. So I know that was a lot, but any questions, comments, feedback?
Now you said you don't like the highest and best. Is there a reason? Because I've done it. I'm just curious.
Well, I think it got overused. Honestly, the highest and best got overused, and I don't think it's always in your seller's best interest. I mean, your seller, I think it was overused because you had agents out there breaking rule number one, and they would immediately go to getting an offer, maybe two offers, and they would go back to everybody and say, bring your highest and best, blah, 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 blah. That's not always in the best interest of that seller. The seller may have a really good solid offer sitting right there, and may be in their best interest to accept what is the best offer right now and log that down. But agents were overusing that, and whenever we get into competitive markets, we tend to see them. I've said this before in class. You may or may not have heard me say this. Nothing is ever always. So agents like to jump on the bandwagon of whatever they think is the thing to do in the moment. And I'm just saying, you may have 40 offers, but you may not need to delay and play a game of highest and best trying to get a nickel's worth more dollars, because it's not just the price, it's the terms. Like if you have somebody with an appraisal contingency and all these other contingencies, and their sales price, which we saw a lot of, is unrealistic, and then you still have to get past that appraisal contingency, what kind of offer do you really even have? Or you may have a cash buyer that is no contingency, solid, I'm going to show up at the closing with the money, and I don't have to worry about the appraisal. So, it's all about what's truly in the best interest of the client. But I would see agents just, do what they saw other people doing rather than think about what was truly in the best for those circumstances.
I still see it. People put in listings. I guess if they think it's a great listing and that it's going to sell in the first weekend, they'll already put in the listing, in the original listing, highest and best due on Monday, and then you see that week after week after week, and they don't bother to change the listing.
And this is a fine example, and I appreciate the feedback because you guys are the ones that give me the feedback. That's an example of rule number one, what you shouldn't follow, because what you are implying to people is when you say offers are due, that implies to me that if I don't send it by that due date, that it's somehow not going to be presented, which would be absolutely illegal. It doesn't matter. Again, that's another fine example of an agent out there doing what they hear or see other people doing and assuming it's right. And, when we do have a competitive market, there are some times where if it's carefully worded enough, you can say something like there'll be an offer review date on such and such date. And then if you did put an offer review date in there, you would have to, of course, update it but you would, but it would need to be a legit thing. People are playing games when they do stuff like what you're describing, especially when the market's not actually in that state. They're trying to create a sense of urgency, but it's not genuine and it's fake. And then when you see that, it's the same language every week after week, it's a bunch of BS. So, so if you were to put an offer review date, let's say you had an asset manager that you're working for, and the asset manager says, we're going to review all these offers. Communicate that. The offer review date is here. And then you need to say, however, all offers will be presented regardless of when they're received, because that is what's legally required.
Yeah.
So that's what's legally required. And I realize that a lot of times, when we work for entities and asset managers and stuff, that they don't understand the license law and the rules, and that some of them even have a software systems that require a fee to be paid, only if your offer is selected and only at closing and this and that comes out of commission, and you have to upload it and this and that. At the end of the day, if you're the listing agent, and you get an offer emailed to you and it's not uploaded, you have to actually send it to the asset manager or whoever the boss is. But you need to explain to the agent, they're not going to, I'm just giving you the feedback. If it's not in their portal, they're not going to consider it. I've presented it to them, but this is their rules. I'm just telling you, this is how they play and this is their rules. And in some of these cases, the agents are like, well, why can't you just upload it for me? And the problem is because they will be assigned as the buyer agent under some of these software systems rather than the true buyer agent. So we have to find a way to make sure we're covering our tail and doing our job, and also getting the things done the way the client wants it. But at the end of the day, all offers have to be presented. So if somebody sends you something on a paper napkin, you can't say, we don't accept paper napkins. You need to revise this and put it on this form. Absolutely not. You scan that paper napkin and email it to the client or the asset manager or whomever, and be able to prove you delivered it. And then if you and your client want to counter that, then you can counter it using a full contract, not a counteroffer form, because otherwise you've got your paper napkin as your mothership contract. So counteroffer forms are dangling signature pages that stick to the back of the original offer. So but that's a fine example though of rule number one. It's a hot mess. It's number one for a reason, Carlin, because it's everywhere in so many different ways. It's
like I get things like that it basically is a bridge loan that they're trying to set, and they come in a website. They don't send me an offer, but they're like, we'd really like to work with you. And the first time I sent it to my client, they're like, why are you sending us this? I'm like, because I have to. I don't know this company. I've asked around. Nobody else knows this company. We've never worked for them. If you would like me to find out more, I will. But this is what they're considering. And this seller is very smart. He's like, that's just a bridge loan. I'm like, I know.
It actually might not even be a bridge loan. It might be and hi, Tiana, thanks for joining us. It might not even be a bridge loan. It may be a subject to offer where they want to throw a few $1,000s at the seller and get the seller to sign a quick claim deed over, changing the ownership of their house. And then they promise to take over the payments on the mortgage, but your seller's still on the mortgage and will face foreclosure if they stop making those payments. This is the latest. And I'm going to use the word scam because I think that, you can give people a document and you can get them to agree in a contract to do things that are absolutely not at all in their best interest, and steal their equity and take away their ownership rights. And technically it might not be a crime, but if one of you guys comes to me and and they're out there and it's rampant, and unfortunately there's even some licensees out there doing them, I know people are, they want money. And sometimes if they're in dire straits situation, that little bit of quick money seems like it's a good deal. It's not though, because they now can't just go back and change their mind and put their house on the market and sell it. they now have a title problem because they've changed the name of the title. And they need to understand that by changing the title and doing a quitclaim deed, they've now also violated the terms of their warranty deed with their lender. And the lender, if they find out about it, could foreclose immediately on the person that you're representing. I had an agent that had this an offer like this over the weekend, and the seller was desperate to move to another state and was willing to take just this little bit of money, which was a fraction of their equity, and do this because they just wanted to be free of it. And they actually thought this would make them free of it. And it's not. They'll still be in the mortgage and what have you. And I said, well, it's either a subject to offer or it's an equity grab scam where somebody's promising you, I'll give you this little bit of money and take all your worries away. And then I'll be the owner and then I'll do this and that and the other. But and so I talked to the agent about how much equity the seller had, what was the list price they had. I said, so let me ask you a question. I said, if you were to lower the list price, lower it substantially, but higher than you have it now. Higher than it would be if she gave all her equity away to this other person, and took into account commissions and everything, and lowered the price enough that she would still come out ahead. Do you think, because there's so few properties on the market in that price point, do you think this could potentially create a bidding war? And she's like, yeah. I was like, well, then I would try that. And guess what? That was 2 days ago. And guess what? It's under contract with a real buyer.
Awesome. With a real buyer.
With a real buyer. And she's going to make real money. And she's going to pay off her mortgage and be really done. So at the end of the day, we also have to remember that while we're not fiduciaries in the state of Georgia, we don't owe fiduciary relationship, and it says that in Beretta, but it is our job to promote the interest of our client. And you have to say to somebody, listen, this is not your best interest. I'm just telling you right now, I have to present all offers, just like you did, Carlin. I have to present this offer to you. I don't have any choice, but no way would we ever recommend that you actually accept something like this, because we truly do not think it's in your best interest. Any questions? Tiana, do you have any questions or comments?
I was listening and I see what was the part that I missed where it says never mention people or groups of people with advertising?
Oh, that's fair housing. Yes. Don't mention people or groups of people in your advertising, and avoid using the word family. You sell real estate. And so for fair housing reasons, you're not trying to, buyers know that they're buyers. You're not trying to appeal to a group of buyers. You're trying to appeal to any buyer that might be looking for a product like the one you've got on the market. And so agents love to say things like, this would be a great family home. No, familial status is a protected category. What do you mean by family? It's just best not to use people. And that goes for also postcards and things like that. Don't put a picture of a family. Don't put a picture of people on your advertising, trying to connect with a certain group of people, because stating a preference towards something is just as much of a fair housing violation as discriminating against groups of people.
So okay, thank you for that. That makes sense. The only situation I had occur, which I post on my social media page this weekend, is I am kicking myself in the butt, and I'm gonna be transparent. I know I'm talking to my broker, but I'm gonna be transparent. I had a client who saw a house with me last year in August. They didn't win the bid, so he got frustrated and said that he was going to cast his net wider and work with more than one agent to try to see if he can get a pocket listing or off-market house in order to, work directly with the agent and get a better offer. I said, okay. I sent him a couple houses after that. He didn't like them, didn't move forward. Then lo and behold, in January, the house that he lost the bid on, the new owner put the house back on the market in January. and he went directly to the agent and went under contract and closed on Friday. And so he called me on Saturday to let me know that he had closed on that house. And I was like, there is nothing I can do because literally we did not have any type of buyer brokerage with that one. And in addition to that, the agent came back to him, the one he went directly to and bought the house, and the house was 1.4. He actually, she's been talking to him, trying to get him to sell the house again. And he just closed on Friday. And she's like, hey, I can make you 400,000 and I make 90 and by selling it to somebody else. She was like, I do this all the time. And you know, a part of me is I'm going to be transparent. I'm like, I need to talk to this girl because apparently her strategy in real estate is she works with a lot of high-end clientele, in which she's told him they usually are paying cash for properties and not getting financing. And so she has dual license, Georgia, New York, and I think a couple more places. And so anyway, I was like, he said, Tiana, what do you think? I said, you're going to have to pay capital gains if you do that because you just closed on the house on Friday. And then for two, you was looking for a house to live in. So why would you sell it and where would you go? Because this is the exact perfect house that you were looking for, that you were basically crying that you didn't get the offer because we were outbid by 75,000 in August. And he ended up paying more this time than what we had even got outbid by, because he paid at least 1.4. I'm waiting for it updated MLS. And we had bid 1.285. And then the person who beat us paid 350. So I'm like, okay, it is what it is. But I was thinking about reaching out to her, Angie, and asking her if she offer any type of coaching.
Any type of what?
Coaching.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't really like her business model. I wouldn't emulate that. You know, Tiana, rule number one is don't take advice from other agents. For one thing, what I heard when you're saying that is I heard this agent is all about making money, quick money, and not about what's actually in the best interest
for
of
the
the client. She about making another commission check. She could care less about whether it's really the right house for this person.
Correct.
She wants to try to spend it to get to promise them quick money and herself another paycheck. And I just feel like that while, yeah, you can make money in lots of different ways in this business, and some of them might be questionable and some of them might, be illegal and some of them might not, but her MO to me is it's all about,
and I agree,
and it's all about making quick money. I could care less about what's in the best interest of a client or customer. Plus, she doesn't have a crystal ball, and she doesn't know if she can really get him 1.4. And who's she going to have to manipulate to pay that when it just sold a week ago?
So when she told him on Friday when they closed, because he told me this on Saturday, he said on Friday, before he closed on the house on Friday, she was trying. So his bid, because it was a multiple offer situation, his offer was the lowest offer. But the owner is who he had connected with at the open house. And I'm like, the owner was at an open house? But I was like, okay, so I don't think he's being 100% truthful, because I don't know about you, but I don't see a lot of owners at open houses, especially in that price point. I've only seen.
No, that's true. You really don't, but you can't stop people. There's some control enthusiasts out there.
Right. And so what he told me, he said, Tiana, my offer was the lowest, but I connected with the owner, and therefore the owner chose my offer over the higher offers. And he said up until closing day, like right before closing day, she was trying to get me to sell. Like, so I guess she was trying to get him to.
Well, maybe they thought, the person really wanted the house and would really love the house.
And yes, so she told him she had an offer in hand. Even on closing day, she was like, hey, you could sign the contract right now. You just closed on it. I could sign another contract with you right now for this cash buyer, and you'll make 400,000. And he was like, well, what about this? And like, why would I do that? And she was like, you can just take the money and put it in she gave him a spreadsheet showing him that he can put the money in a money market account and make money or whatever on his money. And I was like, what? I
So
said, this seems
person
kind of
is
sketchy.
really outside her boundaries as a real estate salesperson.
But I was like, what network? I said, girl, and she told him, she only worked with celebrities. Like, she worked with a lot of high-end clients. I'm not going to say celebrities, a lot of high-end clients who are only paying cash for properties in this price point and higher. And that's why I wanted to connect with her. I'm like, wait a minute. Where you meet these people at?
Well, that's true, but you have to understand that with big money, some of the biggest fraud I've ever seen on a repetitive basis was in the $1 million plus price range. So
that makes sense.
Big money, you've got to be careful because there are a lot of people that work in that price point, and they tend to get of the mindset, agents especially, that rules don't apply to them. And that it's okay. There's a different set of rules, and there's not a different set of rules. And back during the recession years, we had all kinds of shenanigans going on, and people being very creative on ways to make money and flip things and do this and do that, and things. It went from mortgage fraud, the bubble bursting, to short sale fraud. That was crazy. And we were just talking about these subject to offers. Carlin and I were, that's one of the latest scams going on out there, where these investors, and they're, this is not anything new. These 20 years ago, before the recession, this was actually a thing. Those types of offers were out there. They usually weren't that sophisticated. You just had some Joe Schmo investor come by and throw a few $1,000s at a desperate seller and say, I'll take over your mortgage payments. I might even catch up the mortgage payments if you're delinquent, so that it'll stop the foreclosure, and I'll pay the payments for you. And the poor seller thought that was going to save them from their mortgage when they were on the loan. And this person then gets the seller to quit claim their property over to them. So now this investor is the owner on paper of your house, yet you, the seller, is still on the loan. And if they decide to stop making payments, then who's going to get foreclosed on? You are, the one that's still on the loan. Yet you have the power to sell your house. And these types of offers are rampant out there right now. All these systems, they rear their ugly head, and often they are repackaged and renamed. It's amazing in 26 years how many I've seen. So many of these types of scams come back, flips, short sale flips, wholesaling, all kinds of stuff with slight variations, and almost always a new name to describe what it is that makes it seem as if it's different from the crap that was going around 5, 10, 15 years ago. So, yeah.
Wow.
So you just got to be careful.
Crazy.
Rule number 1, don't take advice from other agents, and that means don't do what they do. Rule number 2, don't take advice from customers and clients. And rule number 3, don't take advice from loan officers. This is our always list. Tiana, and I can email both of you guys a copy of this. This is the always list. And then the never list is what you were looking at a minute ago. These are best practices, always and never. And they change and get expanded, and it really should be 10 times longer. But this is just kind of some of the high points of the stuff that I see most often. The way that you get involved in that is you just start, maybe figure out a neighborhood, Tiana, that you want to do target marketing. Target marketing has proven time and time again to be way more effective than throwing thousands and thousands of marketing pieces everywhere, and send target, just listing, just sold type of postcards, twice a month to a very targeted neighborhood. If you are like, this is an area, this is a price point, the prices in this neighborhood are all in this same price point, this is my expertise, and become that expert in that neighborhood. And over time, that's how you build those relationships and you build into that market.
Okay. And what about somebody was asking me to get involved at the I guess the executive club or the presidential club of the Chamber of Commerce. Have you Is
Yeah,
that
no,
worth, is that really worth
we're in the
3 days?
relationship business. You need to be going to all kinds of networking, and you need to get involved with all the people in the business, because any of those types of relationships out there, at the end of the day, we're in the place to live business, and everybody needs a place to live. And guess what? So does everybody they know. Everybody needs a place to live, and so does everybody they know. And so, yeah, you've got to go out there and build those relationships. Absolutely. Absolutely, because it only takes one thing, one referral where somebody's like, oh, my mom's getting ready to put their house on the market, or my this or my that, or I have a friend. And then that one contact can open an entire branch of a tree and limbs of future business that you cannot possibly have foreseen.
And that's how, you're right, Angie, because that's how, even in this situation, I took it. He called me to tell me he got the house, and I wasn't even upset. I didn't even think about the money. I've had agents call me since I made the post, like, Tiana, are you crazy? Like, no, he owe you. And I'm like, no, he don't. So, and then they were like, well, I was like, I understand where you're coming from, but there was no buyer brokerage agreement. So in addition to that, I went over there and took him it wasn't that bad, but like a 200 bottle of whiskey, $200 bottle of whiskey as like a gift. And he showed me what the agent, which, as I told you, he was an unrepresented buyer. So she gave him a poster with his picture on it and the house on it. and
So what you do now that you have this relationship and you're the person that does care about his best interest, nurture that relationship, because guess what? He has neighbors and he has friends. And he has coworkers, and he has relatives and family, and you can position yourself as the family real estate agent.
Exactly. And I was like, I'm going to continue. I was like, I'm not mad. I went over there and gave him a bottle. He was like, oh my gosh, Tiana, thank you so much. And he had 2 friends there when I went over there, and they were like, and he said, oh, Tiana, I think they're going to be looking to downsize in the future.
See, there you go. Relationship business, honey, relationship business. And, once that little twig of a relationship becomes a limb and becomes a branch on the tree, and then that sprouts other limbs. And these relationships can be completely career altering.
Correct.
10 years from now, the business that you could have based on just one avenue, one branch on the tree that formed, it's unbelievable. And in retrospect, you look back on it, but as long as you take care of those relationships, I would say target marketing and nurturing those relationships.
Exactly.
Congratulations.
That's true.
You're the one that cares most about, if you're looking for quick fix, then that's not longevity in this business. That's a good way to shorten a career. It's also a good way to have a really crappy reputation. So I would rather you guys look at this I take this very seriously, and I'm going to have this as a career, and I'm going to make more money doing this than I ever thought I could ever earn in my life. And I'm going to do it and really value my professionalism and bring true value to customers and clients so that they recommend me.
Absolutely. Thank you, Angie, for that.
Any more questions or comments? Oh, no problem, honey. And I'm so proud. I don't know if you heard the story I told earlier. I guess you did, about the bridge, not the bridge loan, but the subject to, and then the house is already under contract from this weekend.
Yes, I did hear that. You said that they were going to try to do a subject to, and you suggested that they create a bidding war by lowering the price, and now it's under contract.
Yeah, in 2 days. And now the seller's house will be paid off by a legit buyer, and the seller's going to get all their equity and move to go see their family in Mississippi in a matter of weeks.
That's amazing.
That's one thing that I pride myself on being brave enough, and I want you guys to feel empowered. And that's what I'm always trying to do, is empower you guys, to make you smarter, more confident, because that's value that you bring. And I heard a wonderful quote. I read a lot of manifestation and spiritual things on Instagram. All my stuff's popping up, and this, it was an old, probably from, 50 years ago, at least 50 or 60 years ago. It was an old video. And the guy said, you're paid for the value, not the time. You're paid for the value, not the time. We've all had transactions that were boom, boom, like it was magic, like it just, everything fell into place. And in a matter of weeks, you got this nice big paycheck and it was just super fast. They fell in love with the first house they saw. Then we've had some that tortured you for 6 months to a year, and maybe you got paid, maybe you didn't. And a lot of times people will say, oh, I spent, 27,000 hours driving them around houses, and this was blah, 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 blah. At the end of the day, you need to shift your thinking of what value am I bringing here? Because that is, if I'm trying to sell myself, I'm selling the value that I bring. I'm not selling, I'm not working an hourly rate job. I'm selling my value, how competent I am, how much I care about their interest ahead of my own, and how I can really bring value to this very expensive transaction of them buying or selling or whatever it is that they're doing. And that's huge. And
I just wrote that quote down just because that's profound. I'm paid for my value, not my time. I just wrote that
you're
down.
paid for the value, not the time. You're paid for the value. And that's what I'm constantly trying to do, is make you guys more confident and more empowered, because you're more valuable. The smarter you are and the more you know this business, that makes you more valuable. If you are competent at helping to promote someone's interest and help them maneuver through a complex legal transaction on the most expensive thing they'll ever own, that has value. But you've got to be competent. And so I'm determined that y'all are going to be competent. And if you ever need backup, you know you got backup. So that's not even an issue.
Thank you, Angie. Are you going to be the on that 1 o'clock call as well?
That is Tom. Tom is going to be on the 1 o'clock call. He's talking about the ATAC, the Amendment to Address Concerns, and the TNR and due diligence and stuff like that. So, yeah. So Tom is taking that one, and it starts in about 6 minutes. And you guys might have to log out and log back in, because I think this one will end. But thanks for joining me today. And next week, or we do these broker chats, we alternate. So we do them, we get together, decide what we're going to talk about, and we create a little short PowerPoint. And it'll probably be Tom teaching, but sometimes we fill in for one another. But I'm thinking that these little hour-long classes are helpful, because I think you guys get a little nugget of reminders and get a little nugget of, oh yeah, that's something that now I get it. Now that's sticking in my head more than it was before. Now I feel empowered. I feel like I have more value. So that's the plan anyway. Thanks for joining me, ladies.
Absolutely. Thank you,
Angie. Appreciate it.
Okay, bye-bye.
I'll see y'all later.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.